This happened when I was 15 in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania. It was Halloween night, 2012. My parents let me stay home alone because they were at a friend's party, and I was supposed to hand out candy to the trick-or-treaters. It was my first time being home by myself on Halloween, and I was kind of excited about it. By 8:30 p.m., the flow of kids started to slow down. The streets got quieter. The laughter faded. I remember sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, the only sound being the hum of the TV in the background. Then the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there was a little girl standing there. She couldn't have been more than 6. She wore a torn princess costume, dirty, like she had been outside for hours. She looked up at me and said softly, "Can I have candy?" I smiled, grabbed a few pieces and dropped them in her bag. But when I looked down again, she was gone. The street was empty. No footsteps, no laughter, just silence. A shiver ran down my spine. I shut the door and tried to laugh it off. Maybe she ran off to catch up with her parents. Around 10 p.m., I was getting ready for bed when I heard something, a soft tapping noise. It was coming from the window behind the couch. I slowly turned off the TV. The tapping stopped. Then came 3 louder knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My house was surrounded by woods in the back. No one should have been there. I took a few steps toward the window, my phone flashlight trembling in my hand. And then I saw her. The same little girl, standing just outside the glass. Her face pale, her eyes wide and glassy. Her head tilted slightly, and in the beam of my flashlight, I noticed something. Her feet weren't touching the ground. I screamed and ran upstairs, locking myself in my room. I called my parents, barely able to speak. They told me to stay quiet. They were calling the police. When the cops arrived 20 minutes later, they found small footprints in the mud near the window, but they only went halfway across the yard, and then stopped. No signs of anyone else. No neighbors saw a little girl that night. A few days later, my neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, told me something that chilled me. She said that 20 years ago, a little girl from our neighborhood had gone missing on Halloween. Her name was Lila, and she was last seen in a torn princess costume. This story took place in 2019, when I was a sophomore in college. My friends and I were invited to a huge Halloween party at a house near campus, a 3-story rental known for crazy parties. There were flashing lights, loud music, fake blood, and people in every kind of costume you could imagine. I went as a firefighter, nothing special. Around 11 p.m., I decided to step outside for some air. The backyard was dimly lit, and there were a few people smoking by the fence. That's when I noticed her. A girl sitting alone on the edge of the deck, dressed as a ghost. Not like a cute costume either. She wore an old, faded white dress, her hair completely covering her face. Something about her looked too real. I thought she might be drunk or upset, so I walked over and asked if she was okay. She didn't respond. She just tilted her head slowly, like she was listening for something. Then she said in a whisper, "You shouldn't be here." It caught me off guard. I laughed nervously and said, "Yeah, probably not. This party's wild." She didn't laugh. She just stood up, her movements jerky, unnatural, and walked away toward the woods behind the house. I tried to follow her, but when I reached the trees, there was no one there. I went back inside, told my friends about it, but they thought I was joking. At around 1 a.m., the cops showed up. Apparently there had been complaints about noise, but one of the officers asked everyone to leave immediately. He said the property was supposed to be vacant. The owner had died earlier that year. No one was renting it anymore. We were all confused, but when we checked the lease later, the party organizers swore they got permission from someone online. They showed us the messages, and the name on the account was the same name as the woman who died. A week later, the police confirmed the property was still in probate. No one had access to it. Whoever threw that party, or whoever we saw that night, wasn't supposed to be there. And that girl in the white dress, no one else remembered seeing her but me. The last story happened in 2022. I was 28, living in a small rented house in Oregon. It was a quiet neighborhood, mostly older couples, not many kids. It was around 10:30 p.m., and I had just finished cleaning up after a small Halloween movie night with friends. They left, and I was about to head to bed when there was a knock at my door. 3 knocks, slow and heavy. I hesitated. It was late for trick-or-treaters, but I grabbed the candy bowl anyway and opened the door. There was a man standing there. Not a kid, a full-grown man. He wore a black hoodie, ripped jeans, and a cracked plastic clown mask. In his hand was a small orange pumpkin bucket. He just stood there, breathing heavily. I said, hey man, kinda late, huh? He tilted his head slightly. Trick or treat, he said, his voice muffled behind the mask. I dropped a few candies into the bucket, trying to play along, but I was uneasy. He didn't leave. He just stood there, staring. Then he leaned forward a little and whispered, "You gave me the wrong candy last year." I froze. I'd never seen this man before. He slowly lifted his mask, just enough for me to see part of his mouth. It was smeared with something dark. I slammed the door and locked it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. A minute later, I heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel, circling the house, then tapping at the back window. I called 911, whispering to the dispatcher, telling them someone was outside. But before the police arrived, everything went quiet. When they searched around, they found the pumpkin bucket on my porch. Inside were 3 small animal bones and a folded piece of paper that said, "See you next Halloween." That was 2 years ago. Every October, I find that same orange bucket on my porch, empty, always after midnight. Halloween's supposed to be fun, a night where monsters are make-believe. But sometimes the things that scare us the most aren't hiding in haunted houses. They're waiting outside our own doors. So, tell me, which story scared you the most? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories. Stay safe out there, and happy Halloween.